Today, we're going to look at one of the most fundamental composition tools in photography and film, the rule of thirds. The rule of thirds is a type of composition where an image is divided evenly into thirds, both horizontally and vertically, and the subject of the image is placed at the intersection of those lines or along one of the lines itself. Some filmmakers and videographers love the rule of thirds, others are not so keen. And you know what? Neither of those views are right or wrong because there's no right or wrong way to do art. However, learning these kinds of rules or guidelines or visual tools will give you a really good foundation to build your skills as a videographer so you know why some shots look visually appealing while others do not. Using the rule of thirds is a really easy way to step up your filming, and then once you understand it, once you have some experience with it, you can shoot however you like. Am I gonna get kicked out for saying that? In this video, I'm going to show you how to use the rule of thirds effectively and also some instances where you can chuck it out the window completely. And then using a promo video that I made a little while back, I'll walk you through where I used the rule of thirds in my shots in the context of a whole video. Then you'll have more of an understanding of how this principle can help to marry all of your shots together to create a visually appealing sequence. So, as we learned in the intro, the rule of thirds is where an image is divided evenly into thirds, both horizontally and vertically, and the subject of the image is placed at the intersection of those lines or along one of the lines itself. I want to take this one step further and look at it in terms of not just the lines and cross sections, but as 6 different zones. As you're framing your shot, ask the question, where is the main focus or action taking place? If you're already sitting there going, but Rachel, the shot you have right now isn't following the rule of thirds, well, this is one of those instances that the rule of thirds is not law. And there's no reason we can't film the shot like this, but unless you're going to put a graphic or focal element here, it feels like a lot of awkward, empty space when I am the main focus of this shot. But if this was an interview and I was looking off camera, then this is a lot more comfortable framing than this, and it is way more comfortable than framing like this. This is known as looking or leading room, simply because this is the direction your subject is looking in your frame. And this is also a very important part of composition. Wherever your subject is looking, that is where your viewer's eye will be led. Your subject needs room to travel through the frame, guiding the viewer's eye naturally across the image. Correct looking room helps the image to feel open. But if the subject were to be placed here, the eye is drawn right out of the shot. The image can feel unbalanced and closed, and it gives an entirely different message to the viewer. In dialogue scenes, this is called short-sighting. This technique is used to make the viewer feel uneasy, boxed in, and it works to build tension. The reason we feel this way is because we can't visually see what lies ahead of the character. It could be a trap, it could be a wall. Our brain goes searching for answers and draws conclusions of all kinds to fill in the unknown. I think this is also a really good place to address headroom. You want to place your subject's head a comfortable distance from the top of the frame. Not so close that it's being cut off, but definitely not too far away either. If you are framing your shots like this, please stop. Stop now. This can be a time that the rule of thirds comes into play. If you're filming a piece of camera or an interview, you could put your subject's eyes on the top horizontal line, but it doesn't always work depending on how close the framing is. Like this shot in the video that I'll show you at the end, if I were to place my subject's eyes on the rule of thirds line, they would have way too much headroom, and the shot would feel uncomfortable and just look like it's framed incorrectly. However, this changes when I punch in from a mid shot to a medium close-up. With this framing, our rule of thirds principle works perfectly. Now that I've unloaded all of that information on you, let's look at some quick examples. In this shot, the penguins are jumping out of the water on the left and leading our eye across the image. The horizon, if you will, is diagonal, but the water and the ice are still split in a 2 to 1/3 ratio. The two major pieces of debris are floating along these two vertical lines and meet at this cross section. This shot is centered, however, the focal point is on the right-hand vertical line, making that the first thing you look at before your eye travels across the rest of the screen. This shot uses short-sighting, or reverse looking room, but it still works because it's balanced out by having the second person in the frame and making use of these lines. While this shot uses center framing as the girl is the main focus, the horizon is still placed on the lower third. This shot draws your eye from the upper zones down to the lower third as the droplet is about to fall. As you can see, the rule of thirds can be used from extreme wide to really close-up shots. So, when can you break the rule of thirds? Number 1. A great time to break the rule of thirds is for symmetry. Symmetry is very pleasing to the eye because everything is balanced and there is a very obvious focal point in your shot. Symmetry can help to frame your subject, making them the obvious focal point, and you can use symmetrical frames to make a setting that might be quite bland into a beautiful, minimalistic masterpiece. Okay, maybe I'm being a bit overdramatic now, but if you can't tell, I just love symmetry. Number 2, reflections. Ordinarily, I would say avoid centered horizons at all costs. But there is one exception, and that is reflections. If you have a shot like this, a centered horizon makes it beautifully balanced. And if you were to frame it like this, of course, that is fine, but you would be robbing your viewer of this incredibly satisfying image. Should I just rename this video to things that are satisfying? Because that seems to be where it's going. And number 3, you could also break the rule of thirds if you're filming something really stylized like this. This is called a Dutch angle, also known as a Dutch tilt, canted angle, or oblique angle. It's defined as a style of composition that has a noticeable tilt on the camera's x-axis. And a fun piece of trivia, it was first used by German expressionist filmmakers in the 1920s. So it's not actually Dutch at all, but it most likely adopted that name as a mistranslation of Deutsch angle, literally meaning German angle. So there you go. Dutch angles are used to create an unsettling feeling that something isn't quite right, and it builds tension and unease. At another time, we can do a whole video on Dutch angles, so if that is something that interests you, go ahead and let me know in the comments. Now, if you want to frame all your shots in a funky way and break the rule of thirds like it's going out of fashion, you can. But you need to have a reason why. Why are you choosing to use that framing? What are you trying to communicate to your audience? What do you want them to feel when they watch your shots? This can be the difference between them watching your footage and going, wow, that was cool, or going, that was a bit weird. Okay, now let's look at these concepts in the context of an entire video. When I film videos for clients, I love to incorporate as much movement as possible, whether that's movement inside the frame or camera movement or both. Obviously, you don't want to go overboard with movement. You need to have some static shots to cut to so you don't completely overwhelm your viewer, but if the movement is subtle, it can help to keep the pace flowing and driving your story forward. Another thing to consider with movement is the context of the video. The video I'm about to show you is part of a website promo for Tawa Yoga here in Brisbane. Yoga is all about breath and flow and slow movements and the transition of energy. So I wanted to replicate that feeling with my camera work. Let's play the video and I'll walk you through the framing principles I used for each shot as we go.
I find yoga is one of those practices that we don't come to necessarily to relieve stress or relieve tension. We first come to it because we think, oh, we just want to get a bit stretchy. But the beauty of yoga is that once you come into it, you do get that movement in the body, which is beneficial. But the surprising factor of yoga is that you then find that inner peace.
The practice of acceptance, letting go, surrender, mindfulness, being really present in the moment.
Oh, I love it here. It's so calm and peaceful, and it's absolutely my sanity.
It's not about making the shape fit you, it's about making you comfortable in your shape. And so we generally do come around, we'll support you, whether that's offering blocks.
Alright, I think we'll leave it there. Hopefully now you are really gaining an understanding of how you can use the rule of thirds to create balance and harmony, but also that you can step outside of the rules and guide how your viewer feels throughout the video. You can turn the rule of thirds grid on in your phone camera if it isn't already, so you can practice anywhere, anytime. In fact, go practice right now. But first, make sure you like this video and hit subscribe to learn more camera tips and techniques. Leave your questions in the comments below so I can answer them for you, and check out these videos for more ideas. I'll see you next time.